I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, but here I am, sitting in my living room staring at a pile of hotel receipts and feeling like my entire world just collapsed. Her name's Emily. She's been my wife for 6 years, and honestly I thought we had a pretty good thing going. We weren't perfect, but I believed that we were solid. That was until last week, when everything started unraveling. It all began with little things. Her phone buzzing constantly, her acting weird after work, canceling plans last minute and always saying she was working late. She's a pretty bitchy woman, sharp-tongued, quick to lie, always full of excuses, and at first I bought into it. I told myself she was just stressed with her job, maybe having a tough time at her new position. But then I noticed her being extra distant, avoiding my eyes, and I started noticing little inconsistencies in her stories. One night I was cleaning up the living room when I found her purse on the couch, usually left neatly by the door. Out of curiosity, I peeked inside, nothing unusual at first, until I noticed a hotel keycard tucked into a side pocket. My heart stopped. I knew that hotel, it's a fancy place downtown where her company often holds meetings. I thought nah, she wouldn't. But the keycard was there and it was from her last business trip, the one she said she was working late at. That was the first real sign that something was fishy. I started digging through her emails and phone, just a little peek, I told myself. And what I found knocked the breath out of me. Hidden in her email sent folder were receipts, hotel bookings, Uber rides, dinners, you name it, all from the same dates she claimed she was working late. And then I saw the hotel receipts in her name with her room booked for two. The same hotel, the same night she said she was staying late to finish that project. But there was someone else there with her, another name, a guy named Jason, her boss. I felt my stomach turn like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe it. I had suspected she was lying, but seeing it in black and white, knowing she'd gone behind my back with her boss, someone she used to call just a work friend, it made me feel sick. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind? Or was I always just too trusting? I kept staring at those receipts, feeling the heat rise in my face, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. The woman I loved, the woman I thought was my partner, was screwing around with her boss during business trips, lying to my face over and over. I knew I had to confront her. I didn't want to believe it, but everything pointed to it. That night, I waited until she came home. When she finally walked through the door pretending like nothing was wrong, I just looked at her and said, "We need to talk." Her face changed instantly. She was caught and she knew it. She tried to brush it off, call me paranoid, accuse me of snooping. She said I was overreacting, that she didn't do anything wrong, that it was just work, just sexless flirtation, nothing serious. She said that Jason was just an old friend, that they'd had dinner after a long day, that I was crazy to think anything more than that. But I knew better. I saw the hotel receipts. I saw her texts, flirty, suggestive, way too familiar. She kept denying, lying, screaming at me that I was overthinking, that I was jealous and insecure. But the truth was out there, staring me in the face, and I felt my world shattering right then and there. I'd spent years building this life with her, and now I wondered if it was all just a lie. If she was capable of lying about this, what else had I missed? What other secrets did she hide? I felt anger, betrayal, heartbreak, an overwhelming mix that hit me like a freight train. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I just knew that my trust was broken, and everything I believed in was now just a pile of ashes. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus, and all I kept thinking about was how she sat there, so composed, so convincing when she lied. She kept insisting it was just some business dinner, that Jason was just a friend, that she never meant for it to go this far. But her words sounded hollow, like she was reading from a script she'd practiced. I could see the panic behind her eyes, the way her voice cracked when she tried to deny the obvious. I didn't want to believe her, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. Maybe she was just caught in a lie, maybe it was some misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew better. I had the receipts, the hotel keycard, the evidence right in front of me. This wasn't some innocent mistake. This was betrayal, plain and simple. And I was furious. Not just mad, but furious in a way I'd never felt before. I needed some time alone to think. So I went to the garage, turned on the car, and sat there for a while trying to process what I should do. My mind was racing. Should I just pack my bags and leave? Confront her again and demand answers? Or maybe just disappear for a few days and figure out what I really wanted? Every possible course of action seemed like a bad idea, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay in this house, pretending everything was normal. I started by texting a friend I trust, Mike, just to get some perspective. I told him everything, how I'd found out her lies, her excuses. His advice was blunt but honest. Dude, she's cheating. End it. You deserve better. That line hit me hard. I'd spent years building this relationship, convinced that we had something real. But now I saw it for what it was, a fragile house of cards ready to fall. The next day, I decided I couldn't just ignore it anymore. I told her I needed space, that I was going to stay at my brother's place for a few days. She threw a fit, crying and begging me to stay, saying she loved me, that it was a mistake, that she'd fix everything. But I knew better. I knew she was lying again, just trying to manipulate me into staying. I wasn't stupid. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a bitter resolve forming inside me. If she was capable of cheating, of lying to my face for months, then she didn't deserve my trust anymore. I told her I needed time to think and left the house. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, the way her voice sounded when she lied, the moments I missed, the signs I ignored. I felt a strain, mixture of heartbreak and cold anger. I'd loved her once, believed in us, but now I just saw her as a stranger, someone I'd been betrayed by, someone I'd given everything to, and she threw it all away for some meaningless sex with her boss. It was humiliating. I felt like I'd been played, used, and discarded. By the time I was at my brother's place, I started realizing I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to sit around and pretend everything was fine. I needed a plan. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and hope for the best. I needed to think about what I really wanted, whether that was to forgive her, to fight for the marriage, or to cut my losses and walk away. Whatever I decided, I knew one thing: this wasn't going to be a quick fix. The trust was shattered, and rebuilding it would take more than just words. It would take action, and that's when my mind started turning to revenge. Nothing violent, just something that would make her realize what she'd lost. I started researching ways to make her regret what she'd done, ways to turn the tables. I wasn't interested in destruction, but I wanted her to understand that betrayal has consequences. That's when I remembered the power of secrets, the kind that cut deep, the kind that leave scars. I wasn't sure what exactly I would do yet, but I knew I wasn't going to just roll over and accept this. No, I was going to make her pay in my own way. I didn't know how yet, but I started planning, and I knew I had to act fast. Because if I let her keep lying, I'd end up losing more than I already had. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning. I didn't want to act impulsively. I needed to be smart, cold even. I spent hours going through everything I had, reading those hotel receipts again, analyzing her texts, and digging into her social media profiles. I wasn't just looking for more evidence. I wanted to understand her mindset, her routines, her weaknesses. The more I learned, the clearer my next move became. While I was doing this, Emily was blowing up my phone, begging me to come back, crying about how she loved me and how she'd do anything to fix this. Honestly, I didn't know if I still loved her. That part of me was shattered too. But I knew I couldn't just forgive her on her terms. Not this time. I needed to send a message. I wanted her to realize she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from, at least not easily. I decided I'd make her think I was considering forgiving her, just enough to keep her close, but really I was just buying time. I told her I needed more time to think, that I was feeling overwhelmed. She responded with more tears, more pleas, which only fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. The truth was, I wanted her to feel a little of what I felt: confused, guilty, desperate. And then I remembered something I'd stumbled upon during my research. There's a way to turn their own secrets against them, to make them see the consequences of their actions. I started setting up small things, like planting subtle hints of my own, things she wouldn't notice immediately but would realize later. I downloaded some of her private messages, saved photos from her phone, and made sure I had copies of everything related to her affair. I also reached out to a private investigator I found online just to get some outside help. I didn't want to just threaten her. I wanted concrete proof that she'd be unable to deny. While all this was going on, she was still trying to sway me, saying she'd leave her job if that's what it took, promising she'd quit her boss, Jason. She said she'd do anything to keep us together. I wanted to believe her, I swear I did, but part of me knew she'd lie again. That's why I kept my guard up. I didn't trust her anymore, not even a little. One night I got a message from the investigator, photos of Emily and Jason in a hotel lobby, holding hands, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. The way they looked at each other made my stomach churn. The proof was solid. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to confront her with everything, but I also wanted her to feel like she was cornered, like her world was collapsing. I planned to do it in a way that would leave her no room to deny what she'd done. That evening I called her, told her I was coming home. I wanted her to think I was ready to forgive, that I was going to give her another chance. But secretly I was already preparing my words, my exposing. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, maybe even hopeful. That's when I dropped the bomb, showing her the photos, the receipts, everything I'd gathered. Her face went pale. She stammered, tried to lie, but I cut her off. I told her I knew everything, that I had the proof, that I was done playing her games. Suddenly, her bitchy facade cracked. She tried to argue, to explain, but it was too late. She knew her lies wouldn't hold up anymore. Her eyes darted around, searching for a way out. She tried to play the victim, saying I was just jealous, that I didn't trust her, but I was done listening. I told her that she had broken my trust, that she'd betrayed everything we had, and that I couldn't stay anymore. I was angry, hurt, and more disappointed than I'd ever been. I wanted her to know she had lost me completely, and I enjoyed watching her realize she couldn't spin her way out of this. That night, as she begged me to stay, I just stood there, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I had the proof now, and I had made her face the truth. Whatever came next, I knew I wouldn't be the same. The betrayal wasn't just about her cheating. It was about losing the person I thought I knew, the woman I loved. And honestly, I wasn't sure I'd ever get over it. But one thing I knew, this was only the beginning. I was done trusting her blindly. Now I was planning my next move, one that would make her regret ever crossing me. The fallout hit me harder than I expected. After that confrontation, Emily looked stunned, like she'd finally realized she'd pushed me way too far. She kept trying to justify everything, saying she was sorry, that she was weak, that it was just some stupid mistake. But I wasn't buying any of it. I saw through her tears and her desperate pleas. To me, it was just more lies. She was trying to turn things around, make me feel guilty, but I knew better now. This was some innocent slip-up. This was a calculated betrayal. I spent the next couple of days trying to figure out what I really wanted. Do I leave? Do I fight? Do I try to salvage what's left? Honestly, I was exhausted. All my trust was gone and the pain was deep. Every time I thought about her and Jason, my stomach clenched. I couldn't stop imagining what they did, how they looked at each other, the sex they had. It made me feel sick, angry, and hopeless all at once. But amidst the chaos, I started to realize something. If she'd cheat on me with her boss, what else was she capable of? I'd always thought we had a good life, nice house, stable jobs, mutual respect. But now I saw it was all a facade. She was willing to throw it all away for some meaningless sex with a guy who clearly wasn't worth it. It made me question everything about her, about us. How long had she been lying? How many times had she been unfaithful before? I had no answers, only a gnawing sense that I'd been blind for too long. That's when I decided I had to do something about it, something to make her understand she couldn't just cheat and walk away. I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. I wanted her to feel the pain, the loss, the regret, not in a petty or destructive way, but enough to shake her up. I started planning a slow, calculated revenge. Not just to hurt her, but to make her see that her actions had consequences. I wanted her to feel what I felt, utter betrayal and shame. I started by gathering even more evidence. I reached out to the private investigator again, this time asking for more footage, more proof of her meetings, her lies. I also set up a fake email account just to keep tabs on her without her suspecting. I wanted to know what she was doing, who she was talking to, how far this was going. I also began thinking about how to cut her off from her job, her social circle, her life as she knew it. I wanted her to realize she had burned her bridges with me, that her lies had consequences. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. I avoided her calls, didn't answer her texts unless necessary. I didn't want her to think I was weak or easily manipulated. I wanted her to see that I was serious about leaving if that's what it came to. Every day was a battle. Part of me still loved her, part of me hated her, and part of me just felt numb. The pain was like a dull ache that wouldn't go away, no matter how much I tried to distract myself. One evening, I decided I needed to make a move. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her run the show. I wanted her to understand that I was serious about ending this, about taking back control. I arranged to meet her at the house under the pretense of talking things through. When she arrived, she was visibly nervous, probably sensing I'd done something. I kept my tone calm but firm, showing her I was done playing her game. I pulled out all my evidence, photos, the receipts, everything I'd gathered. She looked panicked, trying to deny everything, but I just cut her off. I told her I knew the truth, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I said I was done trusting her, that she'd lied and cheated her way out of our life together. Her face twisted with anger and desperation as she tried to talk her way out, but I wasn't interested anymore. I told her she needed to leave, that she was no longer welcome in my house, and that she'd better get her shit together because I was serious about ending this. Watching her walk out that door was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. She looked like she was losing everything, her grip on her career, her marriage, her sense of control. And honestly, I felt a strange mixture of relief and grief. Relief because I finally knew the truth and had taken action. Grief because I still loved her, or at least thought I did, and now that love was tainted forever. That night, I sat alone in the quiet house, staring at the empty space where she once sat. I felt emptier than ever. But deep down, I knew I was doing the right thing. I had to protect myself from her lies and betrayal. I was tired of being the fool, tired of feeling like I'd been played. Whatever came next, I was done pretending everything was okay. I was going to take control, even if it meant walking away from everything I'd built. The pain was raw, but I was finally starting to see a way forward, one where I wouldn't be the one getting hurt anymore. The days that followed were a blur of emotion and decision-making. I kept thinking about everything I'd uncovered, all the lies, the betrayal, the way she looked at me with that mix of guilt and defiance when I handed her the evidence. Honestly, I oscillated between anger and heartbreak, unsure of who I was anymore. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make her feel the pain she'd caused me, but I also knew that revenge for the sake of revenge wouldn't bring peace. Still, I couldn't help but plan a little something that would make her regret ever crossing me. I spent hours researching how to make her feel the sting of her actions without crossing into anything destructive. I wanted her to see that her choices had consequences, that she had lost something real, me. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and expect her to change. She'd lied too many times, manipulated her way out of every situation. If I was going to do this right, I had to be strategic. First, I started blocking her from my social media. I didn't want her lurking around, trying to worm her way back in. Then, I set up a separate email account and began sending anonymous messages to her boss, Jason, hinting that I had proof of their affair and that I knew everything. I wanted him to feel the pressure, to realize that his actions had consequences too. I also contacted the hotel where she stayed, just to confirm her check-in and check-out times, making sure everything was documented. It was about covering my bases, being prepared for whatever she tried to do next. Meanwhile, I continued to gather more evidence. I reached out to the investigator again, asking for more detailed footage and even some recordings if possible. I wanted to have everything on hand, just in case I needed to use it. I was forming a plan, one that involved exposing her in a way that she couldn't deny. I didn't want to just leave her or shame her publicly. I wanted to make her see that she'd lost control, that her lies had come back to bite her. Sometimes I'd sit in my apartment, staring at the pictures I had of us at happier times, feeling like a stranger in my own life. It hurt more than I thought it would. One week after I threw her out, I decided to confront her one last time. Not to beg, not to plead, I was done with that. I sent her a message saying I had something to tell her, that this wasn't over. When she showed up looking nervous, I pulled out all the evidence I'd collected, showed her the photos, the receipts, the messages. I knew she'd try to deny everything, but I didn't give her the chance. I told her she'd crossed a line, that I knew about her affair with her boss, how I'd seen her hotel receipts, her texts, the pictures, her face drained of color. She tried to spin it, saying it was nothing, that it was just sex, that she was sorry, that she loved me. But I was already over that. I told her she'd lost my trust, lost my respect, and that I was done. Watching her try to salvage what was left was almost comical in a grim way. She begged, crying, saying she'd do anything to make it right, claiming it was a mistake, that she was just weak. She even insisted that Jason was just some guy she was helping out with a project, that nothing serious had happened. I didn't believe her for a second. I knew her lies too well now. I told her I didn't care anymore, that she had chosen this path and I wasn't going to be part of it. I told her to leave, and when she hesitated, I finally lost my temper. I told her I didn't want her to come back, that she'd destroyed what little respect I had left, and that she was no longer welcome in my life. She finally turned and stormed out, screaming and crying, but I didn't care. I felt nothing but a hollow victory. I had exposed her, told her she was done, and made it clear I was moving on. The truth was, I felt like I'd just lost everything I'd ever known. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Still, part of me felt relieved. No more lies, no more secrets. I finally had clarity. She was a liar and a cheat, and I didn't want her in my life anymore. That night I sat alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. I realized I'd been naive, trusting blindly, believing in the life we built. But I also learned that sometimes love isn't enough to save a sinking ship, especially when betrayal runs so deep. I knew the healing process wouldn't be quick or easy, but I was determined to move forward. I couldn't let her betrayal define me, even if it hurt like hell. I promised myself I'd never again let someone take me for granted, that I'd be stronger for this. Now I'm here, still hurting, but also starting to piece myself back together. I've cut her out of my life completely, blocked her number, her social media, everything. I don't want to hear her lies anymore. I've told some friends and they're supporting me, telling me I deserve better. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: I'll never trust blindly again. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take from my story, it's that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are. And sometimes, losing someone is the only way to find yourself again. In the weeks that followed, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The house was quiet, too quiet with Emily gone. I'd spent so much time obsessing over her betrayal, planning my revenge, and now that it was all out in the open, I realized how draining it had been. Still, I knew I made the right choice. Walking away from someone you loved, especially after betrayal, isn't easy, it's devastating. But sometimes, it's the only way to reclaim your dignity and peace. I started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about rediscovering myself after losing the woman I thought I knew. I had to learn how to forgive myself for trusting too easily, for ignoring the signs, for not seeing her true colors sooner. The healing was slow, and some days were worse than others, but I was determined to come out stronger on the other side. Looking back, I realize I learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile. It takes years to build but seconds to destroy. Betrayal isn't just about cheating. It's about the erosion of honesty and respect. And I learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your sense of self. I didn't need to ruin her or humiliate her. What I needed was to take back control over my life. Now I'm focusing on myself. I've started traveling, reconnecting with old friends, and investing in things I love. I'm not rushing into anything new, but I'm hopeful. This experience has shown me that I'm tougher than I thought, that I can survive heartbreak and betrayal and still come out the other side. To anyone going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs and don't let anyone manipulate your feelings. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And remember, sometimes losing someone is the only way to find your true self again. Life goes on, and eventually so will you. And when it does, it'll be on your own terms, stronger and wiser than before.